used to be afraid of the dark. We used to be afraid of the woods, or the creepy alleyway behind the bar, or the stranger knocking on our front door at midnight. But the world has changed. The scary places aren't just fixed locations anymore. Now, the scary places have wheels. We live in the gig economy, a fancy term that basically means we turned our personal cars into taxi cabs and our personal space into a workplace. We invite strangers into our back seats. We carry food to strangers' porches. And sometimes, to make ends meet, we team up. If you've ever worked DoorDash or Uber Eats or Grubhub, you know the grind. You know that finding parking is a nightmare. You know that gas prices eat your profits. So, it makes sense to work as a team, right? One person drives, the pilot. The other person jumps out and grabs the food, the runner. It's efficient, it's profitable, and ironically, we tell ourselves it's safer. Safety in numbers. My name is Ashley. I'm 31 years old, and in February of 2026, living in Salem, Oregon, I thought I had found the perfect setup. I was the runner. My partner was the pilot. He wasn't some shady kid. He was a 62-year-old man, a grandpa figure, someone who complained about his back and listened to talk radio, someone I trusted to navigate the streets while I navigated the app. But I forgot one thing. When you get into the passenger seat of someone else's car, you are surrendering your freedom. You don't control the door locks. You don't control the speed. You don't control the destination. You are sitting in a steel cage that moves at 60 miles an hour. And if the person holding the steering wheel decides that the shift is over and that the horror movie is about to start, there is nowhere for you to run. This is the story of my last delivery. This is the story of the night my workplace turned into my prison. Let me take you back to Tuesday, February 10th. If you know anything about the Pacific Northwest in February, you know the vibe. It's gray, it's damp. The sun sets early, around 5:30 p.m., and by 7 p.m., the fog starts rolling off the Willamette River, blanketing everything in this thick, cold mist. I was working the night shift. In the gig world, the hours between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m. are the Goldilocks zone. Peak pay is active, the traffic dies down, and people get the munchies. You can make serious bank if you hustle. I had been teaming up with a guy named Danny for a few weeks. Daniel Ray Myers. Danny was unassuming. That's the best word for him. He was 62, drove a silver Honda Civic that always smelled like stale coffee and Little Trees air fresheners. He wore flannel shirts and a baseball cap. He looked like the kind of guy you'd see at a hardware store on a Sunday morning, asking where the wood screws are. Our arrangement was simple. It wasn't official per DoorDash policy, but everybody does it. He drove, I ran. See, in downtown Salem, parking is a joke. If you're solo, you have to find a spot, feed the meter, run into the restaurant, wait for the food, run back. It adds 10 minutes to every order. With Danny, he'd just pull up to the curb, idle the engine, and I'd hop out. We were doubling our turnover rate. For those first few weeks, Danny was totally normal. Actually, he was kind of boring. He talked about gas prices a lot. He talked about how the city was changing. He complained about his knees. He felt safe. I viewed him as a sort of paternal figure, a work dad. On this specific Tuesday, I met him at our usual spot around 6 p.m. I tossed my backpack in the back seat, plugged my phone into the charger, and we hit the road. The first few hours were a grind, but a good one. We hit the Chipotle on Lancaster Drive. We hit the Wingstop. The orders were flowing. "Making good time tonight, Ash," he said, tapping the steering wheel. He seemed in a good mood. We were listening to some classic rock station. The heater was blasting because it was freezing outside. It felt cozy. Just two co-workers chasing the bag. Around 8:30 p.m., the rush started to taper off. We were sitting in the parking lot of a Taco Bell, waiting for a ping. "You hungry?" Danny asked. "I can swing through the drive-thru." "Nah, I'm good," I said. "Let's just catch a few more and call it a night." "You got it, boss," he said. He smiled. It's haunting to think about that smile now. It didn't look predatory. It didn't look evil. It just looked like a tired old man trying to be friendly. That's the thing about monsters in real life. They don't wear masks. They don't have ominous music playing when they walk into the room. They wear flannel. They drive Honda Civics. And they wait. Looking back, there were signs. Tiny little glitches in the matrix that I ignored because I wanted to make money. Like the way he would sometimes lock the doors when I got back in, before I even had my seatbelt on. I figured it was just an automatic safety feature of the car, or the way he would ask questions about my living situation. "You live alone, right? You have a boyfriend? Your dad live in town?" I answered vaguely. I didn't think he was casing me. I thought he was just making small talk to fill the silence between pickups. We got an order ping around 8:55 p.m. It was a decent payout, going toward West Salem. Now, for those who don't know the geography, Salem is split in half by the river. East Salem is where the mall is, the hospital, the chaos. West Salem is across the bridge. It's quieter, more suburban. And once you get past the main strip on Wallace Road, it gets rural fast. It turns into vineyards, orchards, and dark, winding roads in the Eola Hills. "West Salem run," I said, reading the app. "You good with that?" Danny nodded. "Let's do it. Last one of the night." Last one of the night. He turned the key. The engine hummed. And we pulled out onto the road, heading toward the bridge. I looked out the window at the city lights reflecting off the river. I was calculating my tips in my head. I was thinking about going home, taking a hot shower, and watching Netflix. I had no idea that I wouldn't be going home that night. I had no idea that as we crossed that bridge, we were crossing a line that Danny had probably drawn in his head hours ago. The vibe changed the second we crossed the Marion Street Bridge. Usually, when you deliver in West Salem, you stick to the flats, the apartments, the suburbs. It's well lit. But Danny didn't take the exit for the residential area. He stayed on the highway for a minute, then took a turn toward the hills. I watched the blue line on my GPS. The navigation was telling us to turn left. Danny turned right. I frowned. "Hey, Dan, the GPS says left." He didn't look at me. He was staring straight ahead, gripping the wheel with both hands. "I know a shortcut," he mumbled. "Avoid the lights." Shortcut? I looked out the window. We were heading away from the houses. The streetlights were getting further apart. The road was getting narrower, flanked by tall fir trees that blocked out the sky. "Danny, this isn't a shortcut," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "This is going out toward the orchards. The customer is back on Dokes Ferry Road." He didn't answer. That was the first red flag. The silence. Danny was a chatterbox. He always had something to say about the traffic or the radio. But now, he was dead silent. The radio was off. The only sound was the tires on the wet asphalt and the hum of the engine. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. My somatic intelligence, my gut instinct, woke up. It whispered, "Something is wrong." I tried to laugh it off. "Okay, seriously, turn around. You're missing the drop-off. We're gonna get a contract violation." He slowed the car down. We weren't near a house. We weren't near a restaurant. We were on a dark 2-lane road with nothing but trees and rain on either side. "Danny?" I asked. "Why are we slowing down?" He pulled the car onto a gravel turnout. It was pitch black. No cell service bars on my phone, just the headlights cutting through the fog. He put the car in park, but he didn't unlock the doors. You know that sound? That distinct thud of the central locking mechanism engaging. I heard it. He hit the button on his armrest. Click, thunk. I grabbed the handle of my door. I pulled, locked. My heart started hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Danny, unlock the door. This isn't funny." He turned in his seat to face me. The grandpa vibe was gone. The tired old gig worker was gone. His eyes were different. They were flat, cold. It was like looking at a shark. He wasn't looking at me like a coworker anymore. He was looking at me like an object, like a problem he needed to solve. "We need to talk," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. "We can talk while we drive," I said, my voice shaking. "Unlock the door." He unbuckled his seatbelt. He shifted his weight, turning his whole body toward me. In the cramped cabin of a Honda Civic, the space between the driver and passenger is nothing. Inches. He reached out. I thought he was going to hit me. I flinched back against the window, but he didn't hit me. He put his hand on my leg, high up. "You're a pretty girl, Ashley," he said. "I've been thinking about you a lot." The air left my lungs. This is the nightmare scenario for every woman. The creepy customer scenario. But usually you can run back to your car. You can drive away. I was in the car. The call was coming from inside the house. "Danny, don't," I said. I grabbed his wrist and tried to shove it away. "Stop. Take me back to the city." He tightened his grip. He wasn't frail. He was strong. Old man strength. "Don't be like that," he hissed. He leaned in closer. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "Just be nice. Just be nice and we can go home." He lunged. It wasn't a seduction. It was an attack. He threw his weight on top of me, pinning me against the passenger door. His hands were grabbing, groping, trying to get under my jacket. I screamed. It was a primal sound. I clawed at his face. I kicked the dashboard. I fought him. I fought him hard. And that's when he realized I wasn't going to be nice. He pulled back. He was breathing heavy. He looked angry. Not the anger of a rejected suitor, but the anger of a predator whose prey is biting back. He reached into the pocket of his door. I thought he was reaching for a phone, or maybe mace. But when his hand came back up into the light of the dashboard, I saw the glint of silver. It was a knife, a folding tactical knife, the kind you buy at a gas station. The blade snapped open with a terrifying click. "I told you to be nice," he said, and then he stabbed me. He didn't stab me in the chest. He stabbed me in the leg, then the arm. It happened so fast, I didn't even feel the pain at first. I just felt the pressure, like being punched with a roll of quarters. Then I felt the wetness. Blood. I screamed again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was shock. "Shut up," he yelled. He waved the knife in my face. "Shut up or I'll put it in your neck." I went silent, instantly. He pulled away from me and settled back into the driver's seat. He was panting. He wiped the knife on his jeans. He put the car in drive. This is the part that haunts me the most. He didn't dump me on the side of the road. He didn't leave me there to bleed out. He started driving again. He drove us deeper into the hills, then back toward the city, then in circles. I was trapped in a mobile cage. I was bleeding. I was terrified. and I was sitting 18 inches away from the man who just tried to kill me. He turned the radio back on. Can you believe that? He turned on the classic rock station. Hotel California was playing. For the next 20 minutes, we just drove. It was a special kind of psychological torture. He was holding me hostage, but we were moving. I watched houses pass by. I watched other cars pass us. I wanted to roll down the window and scream, but the child lock was on. I checked. He had prepared for this. I looked at him. He was staring at the road, his face blank. He looked like he was just driving to the grocery store. I realized then that he didn't have a plan. He had the impulse, the attack. But now he was stuck with a bleeding, terrified woman in his passenger seat, and he didn't know what to do with me. He was improvising, and that meant I had a chance. I knew I couldn't overpower him. He had the weapon. He had the strength. I had to outsmart him. I looked at my leg. The blood was soaking through my jeans. It hurt now, a burning, throbbing pain. I took a deep breath. I forced my voice to stop shaking. I forced myself to sound calm. "Danny," I said. He glanced at me. He tightened his grip on the knife, which he was holding against the steering wheel. "Danny, I'm bleeding really bad," I said. "That's your fault," he muttered. "I know," I lied. "I know. But look, if I bleed out in your car, it's going to make a mess. It's going to smell. The cops will find it." He looked down at the seat. He frowned. He cared about his car. He cared about the evidence. "We need to fix this," I said. "I'm not going to tell anyone. I just need to stop the bleeding. We need bandages." He narrowed his eyes. "You think I'm stupid? You're going to run." "I can't run," I said, gesturing to my leg. "You stabbed me in the leg, Danny. I can barely walk. I just want to clean this up so we can figure this out." I was gambling with my life. I was trying to de-escalate a psychopath. I was trying to frame getting medical help as something that benefited him. He thought about it. I could see the gears turning in his head. He didn't want a dead body. He didn't want a murder charge. He probably just wanted to go back to the way things were an hour ago, before the demon took the wheel. "Where?" he asked. "Walgreens," I said immediately. "The one in Kaiser, on River Road. It's open late. We can get bandages and hydrogen peroxide." "Why Walgreens?" "Because it has lights. Because it has cameras. Because it has people. If you try anything," he said, raising the knife, "I will finish it. Right there in the parking lot." "I won't," I promised. "I just want to stop the bleeding." He nodded. He did a U-turn. We drove toward Kaiser. That drive, it felt like it took a year. Every red light we hit, I prayed he wouldn't change his mind. I prayed he wouldn't snap again. I sat there, clutching my leg, making small talk with my would-be murderer. "Traffic is light tonight," I said. "Yeah," he grunted. It was surreal. It was insane. But finally, I saw the sign. The glowing red W of Walgreens. To me, it looked like the gates of heaven. He pulled into the parking lot. He parked in a spot away from the entrance, in the shadows. "I'm coming in with you," he said. "No," I said. "Danny, look at you. You have blood on your shirt. If you go in there, they'll call the cops immediately. Let me go. I'll buy the stuff. I'll come right back. I promise." He looked at his shirt. There was a smear of my blood on his flannel. He hesitated. This was the moment. The tipping point. "Okay," he said. "Make it quick. If you're not back in 5 minutes, I'm coming in." He unlocked the doors. I opened the door. My leg screamed in pain as I put weight on it. I stumbled. I forced myself to walk slowly. If I ran, He might chase me. I had to look compliant. I limped toward the automatic doors. I could feel his eyes on my back. I could feel the crosshairs. The doors slid open. I stepped onto the linoleum floor. The bright, fluorescent lights hit me. I took a breath of conditioned air. I didn't grab bandages. I walked straight to the pharmacy counter. There was a tech there, a young guy. He looked up. He saw the blood on my jeans. He saw the look in my eyes. "Call 911, I whispered. "Right now. There's a man outside with a knife." The tech didn't ask questions. He grabbed the phone. He shouted for the manager to lock the front doors. I collapsed on the floor. Through the glass front of the store, I saw the silver Honda Civic. Danny was watching. He saw me fall. He saw the employees running. He realized the game was up. He didn't come in. He didn't try to finish it. He put the car in reverse. He peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching. I watched his taillights disappear down River Road. I was safe. But the nightmare wasn't over for the police. Danny didn't go home. He ran. The Salem police launched a massive manhunt. They tracked his phone. They tracked his license plate. He got on Interstate 5 and headed south. He drove all night. He drove through Oregon. He drove through the mountains into California. He made it 800 miles. 2 days later, the California Highway Patrol caught him near Bakersfield. He was sitting in his car at a rest stop, probably trying to figure out where to go next. They arrested him without incident. When they ran his background, the full picture came out. This wasn't his first time. In 1999, he was convicted of using mace on someone. And in 1985, he was indicted for murder. The charges were dismissed back then, but the red flags were there. He was a violent man, a predator. And yet, in 2026, he was able to sign up for an app, pass a background check, and invite a woman into his car. The background check systems for these apps usually only go back 7 years. They missed the murder charge. They missed the history of violence. They let a wolf drive the sheep. Danny didn't go home. He ran. Danny is in jail now. He's facing charges for attempted murder, kidnapping, and assault. He's going to die in prison. My leg is healing. The scars are ugly, but they'll fade. The mental scars, those are harder. I can't get in a car anymore. Not unless I'm driving. I can't use rideshare apps. I can't order food delivery. Every time a silver Civic drives past my house, my heart stops. I learned a hard lesson that night. A lesson about the night shift. We think because we have an app, we are safe. We think because there's a GPS tracker, someone is watching over us. But the app doesn't care. The algorithm doesn't care. When you get into a car with a coworker or an Uber driver or a team driver, you are entering a private space. You are leaving the public world behind. And if that person decides to turn the lock, you are on your own. So, to everyone working the gig economy, stay safe. Trust your gut. If your driver takes a wrong turn, speak up. If the door locks when it shouldn't, get out. And never, ever assume that just because someone looks like a harmless old man, that they aren't hiding a knife in the door pocket. The workplace has changed, and the dangers have changed with it. Tonight, when you order your dinner, take a look at the car that pulls up. Take a look at the driver and ask yourself, do I really know who is behind the wheel? This story serves as a reminder to always be vigilant, even with people you think you know. If you have a story about a workplace nightmare, a delivery shift gone wrong, or a brush with danger, send it to the email in the description below. Stay safe, guys, and as always, thanks for watching. When people think of the United States Capitol, they think of power. They think of the president giving the State of the Union, or senators arguing on C-SPAN, or tourists taking selfies on the lawn. It's the epicenter of American history. It's supposed to be a place of order, of law. But if you actually work there, especially if you work there at night, you realize something else very quickly. The Capitol isn't just a building, it's a tomb. Think about it. This place wasn't just built on high ideals. It was built on the backs of enslaved laborers who died in the mud pulling those stones. It was used as a massive makeshift hospital during the Civil War, where thousands of soldiers bled out on the floors of the rotunda. Men have been beaten nearly to death with canes on the Senate floor. Congressmen have been shot. There is a concept called historical sedimentation. It's the idea that when enough trauma, enough anger, and enough blood soaks into a physical location, the building itself absorbs it. It acts like a sponge. And eventually, that sponge gets full. And the history starts leaking out. My name is Mark. In the winter of 2026, I was a junior correspondent for a mid-sized political news outlet. I was 28, hungry, and trying to make a name for myself in the DC press corps. I thought the hardest part of the job was going to be dealing with arrogant politicians or making tight deadlines. I was wrong. The hardest part of the job was walking alone through the empty corridors of the House wing at 2 a.m. Because in those halls, I learned that the people who built this country, the people who fought and died in it, haven't all left. And some of them really, really hate the press. This is the story of my last week on Capitol Hill. This is the story of the East Grand Staircase. If you enjoy true encounters and things that go bump in the night, consider subscribing and dropping a like on this video. It helps the channel grow and bring you more nightmares. Now, let's get into it. February in Washington. DC is miserable. The wind comes off the Potomac River and cuts right through your coat. The sky is always a flat, dead gray. I was covering a particularly brutal legislative session. They were debating a massive budget bill, which meant marathon hearings. The kind of hearings that start at 9 a.m. and don't wrap up until well past midnight. As a junior reporter, I got the garbage shifts. The senior correspondents would go home to their warm beds in Georgetown, and I would be left in the press gallery, chugging stale coffee, waiting to catch a quote from some exhausted representative stumbling out of chambers. The Capitol at night is a totally different animal than it is during the day. During the day, it's a circus. Thousands of tourists, school groups in matching neon t-shirts, staffers running around with stacks of paper. It's loud, it's alive. But at night, when the tourists are cleared out and the metal detectors are shut down, it's completely, suffocatingly silent. The architecture is massive. Ceilings that are 30 feet high, floors made of solid marble, walls lined with statues of dead guys staring down at you. When you walk down those hallways alone, your footsteps echo so loudly, it sounds like someone is walking right behind you. You catch yourself looking over your shoulder a lot. I had been working the night shift for about 3 weeks when I started noticing the atmosphere. At first, I just chalked it up to sleep deprivation and too much caffeine. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you just know two people were just arguing? The air feels heavy, thick. That's what the House wing felt like after 1 a.m., heavy. I started talking to some of the night shift security guards to pass the time. The Capitol Police are a tough group, but the older guys, the ones who had been walking those halls for 20 years, they had stories. One night, I was sitting near the crypt, the basement area right under the rotunda. I was talking to an older guard named Davis. "You don't want to be down here too late, kid," Davis told me, leaning against a pillar. "Gets weird down here." I chuckled. Weird how? Politicians sneaking out? Davis didn't smile. No, the cats. Cats? Like mice catchers? Like the cat, he said. The demon cat. It's a legend around here. Supposedly it prowls the basement. Looks like a normal tabby at first, but if you get close to it, it swells up to the size of a tiger. They say a guard actually shot at it back in 1862. It only shows up right before something terrible happens. They saw it before Lincoln got shot. They saw it before JFK. I laughed out loud. I thought he was hazing the new guy. Okay, sure, I'll keep an eye out for Garfield. Davis just looked at me. Laugh all you want, reporter. But there's a lot of things in this building that don't clock out when the session ends. Just watch your step on the stairs. I didn't think much of it at the time. Every old building has its ghost stories, right? It's part of the charm. It's what sociologists call legend tripping, making up spooky stories to make a boring place feel more exciting. I figured the guards just told those stories to keep themselves awake. But a few nights later, I found out why Davis warned me about the stairs. And I found out that the history of the Capitol isn't just a story. It's a stain that never washed out. To get from the press area to the House chamber, you usually take the East Grand staircase. It's exactly what it sounds like. A massive, sweeping staircase made of white marble and Aquia Creek sandstone. It's beautiful, in a very cold, imposing kind of way. It was a Thursday night, or technically Friday morning, 2:15 a.m. A committee hearing had just unexpectedly wrapped up, and I needed to get upstairs to the House gallery to file my report. I had my laptop tucked under my arm and my phone in my hand, reading an email. I was exhausted. I was running on fumes. I hit the bottom of the East Grand staircase and started jogging up the steps. I was maybe halfway up when it happened. I didn't trip over my own feet. I didn't slip on a slick spot. I felt something grab my ankle. It wasn't a brush. It wasn't a snag on the carpet. It was a distinct physical grip. It felt like a large, heavy hand clamping down right above my shoe and yanking backward. I pitched forward hard. My laptop flew out of my hands and clattered up the marble stairs. I threw my hands out to catch myself and slammed my palms and knees into the sharp edge of a stone step. Pain shot up my legs. I lay there for a second, gasping. The wind completely knocked out of me. "What the hell?" I hissed. I scrambled around, sitting on the stairs, looking down to see what I had tripped over. I expected to see a loose piece of brass stripping, or maybe a discarded cable from a camera crew. The stairs were completely bare, smooth marble. Nothing. I looked down the staircase. The hallway below was empty. I looked up the staircase. The landing above was empty. There was absolutely no one there. My heart started thumping. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I reached down and touched my ankle. The muscle was actually throbbing. It felt bruised. I slowly stood up, my knees shaking. I gathered up my laptop. The screen was cracked, which was coming out of my paycheck, and I limped the rest of the way up the stairs. When I got to the press gallery, my editor, an older guy named Tom, was packing up his briefcase. He saw me limping in, pale and sweating. "You look like garbage, Mark," Tom said. "What happened?" "I fell on the east staircase," I said, rubbing my knee. "I swear to God it felt like someone grabbed my leg." Tom stopped packing his briefcase. He looked at me. His expression changed from irritated to something else. Something like pity. "The East Grand staircase?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, near the bottom." Tom sighed. He walked over to the mini fridge, pulled out a bottle of water, and tossed it to me. "Sit down, kid," he said. "Let me give you a quick history lesson. You know who William Talby is?" I shook my head. "Never heard of him." He was a congressman from Kentucky back in the 1880s, Tom said, leaning against his desk. Big guy, charismatic, powerful, but he had a secret. He was having an affair. Tom explained that back in 1887, a journalist named Charles Kincaid, who worked for the Louisville Times, found out about the affair and wrote a massive expose. The headline basically called Talby out for being caught in flagrante. The article ruined Talby, Tom said, destroyed his career. He didn't run for re-election. He became a lobbyist, which meant he was still roaming these halls every day. And he was furious. According to the history books, Talby and Kincaid crossed paths in the Capitol all the time. And Talby, who was massive, started physically bullying the reporter. "I'm not talking about mean words," Tom said. He would grab Kincaid by the collar. He would yank his ears. One time, in an elevator, Talby stomped his heel down on Kincaid's foot and held him there while the guy screamed in pain. He threatened to cut his throat. It was a campaign of terror. And it finally boiled over in February of 1890. Right around this time of year, Tom noted. Kincaid couldn't take the abuse anymore. He went home, got a pistol, and came back to the Capitol. Kincaid was walking down the East Grand Staircase, Tom said, pointing a finger at me. Talby was walking up. Kincaid pulled the gun and shot the former congressman point blank in the face. I felt a chill run down my spine. He killed him on the stairs? Talby fell backward, Tom said softly. He bled out all over those marble steps. The blood soaked into the porous sandstone. If you look closely near the bottom of the staircase during the day, you can still see the dark, rusty stains baked into the stone. I swallowed hard. I had just fallen right where a man had been murdered. Talby didn't die right away, Tom continued. He suffered in a hospital for 11 days before he died. Kincaid went to trial, claimed self-defense because of the bullying, and got acquitted, walked away scot-free. I looked at my bruised ankle. Okay, so it's a spooky history story. What does that have to do with me tripping? Tom looked at me dead in the eye. In parapsychology, there are two types of hauntings, Tom said. There's residual, like a tape recording playing on a loop. A ghost just walks the same path, not interacting with anyone. It's called the stone tape theory. The idea that the marble absorbed the trauma of the murder. And the other type? I asked. Intelligent, Tom said. A ghost that knows where it is. A ghost that reacts. A ghost that holds a grudge. Tom leaned in closer. Talby hated journalists. A journalist ruined his life. A journalist shot him in the face. And ever since 1890, reporters, specifically members of the press corps, have reported being shoved, tripped, and harassed when they walk up those stairs. I stared at him. "You're a journalist, Mark," Tom said quietly. "You didn't trip. He tripped you." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell Tom he was crazy, but my ankle was still throbbing with the distinct imprint of a hand. I didn't sleep that night. For the next few days, I was a nervous wreck. Adults have this thing psychologists call the curse of knowledge. We are so conditioned by society to believe in science and logic that when something impossible happens, our brains immediately try to rationalize it. It was a muscle spasm, I told myself. It was static electricity. It was vertigo. But I started avoiding the East Grand Staircase. If I had to go to the house chamber, I would walk 5 minutes out of my way to use a different stairwell. I also started doing research. I dug into the archives. I found a guy named Richard Livingston. He runs Ghost City tours in DC. He's a veteran investigator. I emailed him, off the record, asking about the Talby ghost. He replied within an hour. "Talby is highly active," Livingston wrote, "and highly discriminatory. He doesn't bother the tourists. He doesn't bother the cleaning staff. He only targets the press. It's a textbook intelligent spatial haunting. The bloodstains act as an anchor. Be careful." Livingston also told me something fascinating about the tours he runs. He said that adults usually dismiss the ghost stories. But children? Kids who go on the tours are incredibly receptive to the energy. Psychologists call it transliminality, or having thin mental boundaries. Children haven't built up the rigid walls of skepticism yet. They don't automatically filter out the impossible. Livingston said kids will frequently point to the stairs and say they see a large, angry man standing there, even before the tour guide tells the story. Because they aren't trying to rationalize it, they just see it. I wished I had thick mental boundaries. But after my fall, my boundaries were shattered. I felt like I was hyper-aware of every shadow in that building. The climax happened exactly 1 week after my first fall. Thursday night. It was 3 a.m. I was the last reporter in the gallery. I had finally finished my piece on the budget bill, hit send to my editor, and packed up my bag. I just wanted to get to the metro and go home to my apartment. I walked out of the press area and into the main corridor. The lights in the hallway were flickering. Not like a horror movie strobe light, just a faint, inconsistent buzzing. The power grid in the Capitol is old. It happens. But the temperature, it had plummeted. It's an old building, it gets drafty. But this wasn't a draft. This was like walking into a meat freezer. I could literally see my breath puffing out in small white clouds. I pulled my coat tighter around me. To get to the exit I needed, the fastest route was down the East Grand Staircase. I stood at the top of the stairs, looking down into the gloom. The bottom of the staircase was wrapped in shadows. "Don't be an idiot, Mark," I told myself. "It's a staircase. Just walk down it." I gripped the wooden banister tightly. My knuckles were white. I started descending. I was halfway down. I could see the dark, rust-colored stains on the marble near the bottom landing. Talby's blood. That's when I heard it. It wasn't a footstep. It wasn't the wind. It was a heavy, wet, wheezing sound. The sound of a man trying to breathe through a throat full of liquid. It was coming from right behind me. I froze. My entire body locked up. The hair on my arm stood straight up. I didn't want to turn around. Every instinct in my DNA was screaming at me to run down the stairs and not look back. But I couldn't move. The wheezing got closer. It sounded like it was right next to my ear. Then, I smelled it. Copper. The thick, metallic, sickening smell of fresh blood. It was so strong I almost gagged. And then, a voice. It wasn't a whisper. It was a low, guttural, furious growl right over my shoulder. Filth. Before I could even process the word, I felt a massive, invisible weight slam into my back. It wasn't a trip this time. It was a full-body shove. It felt like a linebacker had hit me between the shoulder blades. I was thrown forward, entirely airborne. I tumbled down the remaining dozen marble steps. I hit the stone hard, rolling, my shoulders smashing against the edge of a step, my head bouncing off the floor of the bottom landing. I lay there on the cold marble, completely dazed. My vision was swimming. My shoulder was screaming in agony. I think I had dislocated it. I groaned, rolling onto my back, clutching my shoulder. I looked up the staircase. Standing at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the dim emergency lights of the hallway, was a figure. It was a man. He was massive, tall, broad-shouldered, but he wasn't solid. He looked fuzzy, like static on an old television set. He was wearing a long, dark coat, typical of the late 1800s. And he was looking down at me. I couldn't see his face clearly. The lower half of his face looked wrong. It looked dark, mangled, like a shadow was eating away at his jaw, where Kincaid had shot him. He stood there for maybe 3 seconds. We just stared at each other, the living journalist and the dead politician. And I swear to God, I felt pure, unadulterated hatred radiating off of him. It was a heavy, suffocating anger that had been trapped in that building for 130 years. Then, the figure simply dissolved. He didn't fade away. He just collapsed into the darkness. Like mist hitting a hot pavement. The oppressive cold instantly lifted. The smell of copper vanished. I was alone again on the floor of the Capitol. A security guard found me about 10 minutes later. I told him I tripped. I told him I was just clumsy and lost my footing. What was I going to say? A 130-year-old ghost shoved me down the stairs because I work for a newspaper? They would have pulled my press credentials and sent me to a psych ward. The guard helped me up. He looked at the stairs. He looked at the rust stains on the marble. He didn't say anything, but the look he gave me, he knew. I went to the ER. Mild concussion, separated shoulder. I took a week off work to recover. During that week, sitting in my apartment with my arm in a sling, I did a lot of thinking. I thought about monumental time. It's a concept that says some memories are so violent, so intense, that they escape the normal flow of history. They become permanent fixtures in the present. The U.S. Capitol isn't just a building where laws are made. It's an infrastructure of enchantment. It is a physical hard drive that has recorded every ounce of pain, anger, and violence that has happened within its walls. The enslaved builders in the basement, the dying soldiers in the rotunda, the demon cat prowling the crypts, and William Preston Talby pacing the East Grand Staircase, waiting to exact revenge on any member of the press arrogant enough to walk in his territory. When you engage in legend tripping, when you go on those ghost tours to get a cheap thrill, you are playing with something you don't understand. You are stepping into a Foucauldian space, a place haunted by the violence of the past. For tourists, it's a spooky story. For me, it was a separated shoulder and a realization that I was working in a graveyard. I didn't go back. I emailed my resignation to Tom the next week. I told him the hours were too brutal and I was moving back to my hometown to work in local news. Tom replied with a one-line email. "I understand, Mark. Stay off the stairs." I haven't been back to Washington, D.C. since. I write puff pieces now. Local city council meetings, high school sports. It's boring and it doesn't pay well. But the buildings I work in are new, and they don't have bloodstains baked into the floorboards. The haunting of the U.S. Capitol is one of the most rigorously documented parapsychological phenomena in the country. It is a perfect, terrifying example of an intelligent haunting anchored by historical trauma. We like to think that when we die, we move on. But cases like Congressman Talby suggest something darker. They suggest that if you die with enough anger in your heart, you don't move on. You just stay right where you fell, waiting for someone to blame. If you ever visit Washington, D.C., if you ever take a tour of the Capitol building, take a look at the East Grand Staircase on the house side. Look near the bottom steps for the dark stains in the marble. You can take a picture. You can marvel at the history. But if you are a journalist, a blogger, or a reporter, do yourself a favor. Take the elevator. If you have a story about a historical haunting, a haunted workplace, or an encounter you can't explain, send it to the email in the description below. Stay safe, and as always, thanks for watching.
When you get into the back seat of a stranger's car, you are making a silent contract. You tap a button on your phone. You see a name, a license plate, and a star rating. And you trust that this person, this complete stranger, is going to be your sanctuary. You trust that the metal shell of the car is going to protect you from the world outside. We call it rideshare. It sounds communal. It sounds safe. But we forget that the driver isn't a bodyguard. He isn't a cop. He's just a guy trying to pay his rent. And if trouble comes knocking on the window, if the world outside tries to get in, what is your safety worth to him? Is it worth a dent in his bumper? Is it worth a 1-star rating? Or are you just cargo? Cargo that can be dumped the second things get complicated. My name is Sarah, and on Valentine's Day of 2025, I found out exactly what my safety was worth. It was worth less than a $5 cancellation fee. I was in a rideshare in Hyattsville, Maryland. I was being followed, and when I told my driver that I was in danger, he didn't lock the doors. He didn't drive to the police station. He pulled over, he unlocked the doors, and he told me to get out. This is the story of how the gig economy handed me over to my stalker. To understand why I was in that car, you have to understand the day. February 14th, Valentine's Day. For most people, it's a day of romance. For me, in 2025, it was a day of dread. I had just gotten out of a relationship that I can only describe as suffocating. My ex, let's call him David, didn't take the breakup well. He was the kind of guy who thought no was just the start of a negotiation. He would show up at my job. He would text me from random numbers. He oscillated between begging for another chance and threatening to ruin my life. I had blocked him on everything. I was trying to move on. That evening, around 7 p.m., I was heading to a friend's house in Hyattsville. We were doing a Galentine's thing. Wine, pizza, bad movies. Just a way to ignore the holiday. I ordered a ride. I won't say which app it was. Uber, Lyft, they're all the same when it comes down to it. But let's just say it was the standard option. The car pulled up. It was a gray sedan, clean, nothing special. The driver was a middle-aged guy. He didn't say much, just confirmed my name, nodded, and started the trip. I got in the back seat, put my headphones on, and exhaled. That feeling. You know the one? The feeling of the door closing and the lock clicking? It's supposed to be relief. You're out of the open air. You're moving. You're safe. We merged onto the main road. The traffic was heavy. It was Friday night in Prince George's County, so everyone was going somewhere. Brake lights were a sea of red. I was scrolling through Instagram, trying to dissociate. I wasn't paying attention to the road. I wasn't paying attention to the cars behind us. Why would I? I was in a bubble. I remember looking out the window as we passed a strip mall. The lights were blurring. I felt calm for the first time all day. I thought I had escaped the drama. I thought David was at home, stewing in his own misery. I didn't know that he had been waiting. Behavioral profilers call it the hunter's patience. He hadn't texted me all day. I thought that meant he was moving on. But silence isn't always peace. Sometimes silence is just someone holding their breath while they aim. He must have been watching my apartment. He must have seen me get into the rideshare. And as we turned onto Adelphi Street, moving deeper into the darker, quieter part of town, he decided to make his move. It started with a turn. We made a left onto a side street to avoid some traffic. It was a random GPS reroute. You know how the apps do that? They send you through neighborhoods to save 30 seconds. I looked in the side mirror casually. There was a dark SUV behind us. It made the turn with us. I didn't think anything of it. It's a road. People drive on it. Then we made another turn. A sharp right. The SUV turned too. That's when the prickle started. That biological alarm bell at the base of your skull. I took my headphones off. I sat up straighter. I stared at the headlights in the rear window. They were aftermarket LEDs, blindingly bright. I recognized them. David drove a black SUV with those exact lights. "You're being paranoid, Sarah," I told myself. "It's a popular car. It's a coincidence." But then the SUV sped up. It got right on our bumper. I mean, inches away. I could see the silhouette of the driver. He swerved a little to the left, like he was trying to pass, but then he pulled back in. He flashed his high beams. Once, twice, 3 times. That was his signal. He used to do that when he picked me up from work. 3 flashes. My stomach dropped through the floor. It was him. I leaned forward. "Excuse me?" I said to the driver. "Sir?" The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. He looked annoyed that I was talking to him. "Yeah, I think the car behind us is following me," I said. My voice sounded small, trembling. "It's my ex-boyfriend. He's stalking me." The driver didn't look scared. He didn't look sympathetic. He looked irritated. He glanced in his mirror. "The SUV?" "Yes," I said. "Please, just keep driving. Don't stop." At this point, I was still operating under the assumption that the driver and I were a team. I thought, we are in this car together. If I'm in danger, he's in danger. He'll help me. But I was wrong. To me, the SUV was a threat to my life. To the driver, the SUV was a threat to his paint job. We call this the dump incentive. In the gig economy, a driver is an independent contractor. His car is his asset. If he gets into an accident or a road rage incident, he pays for it. Uber doesn't send him a check for being a hero. So when I told him, "My crazy ex is chasing us," he didn't hear a plea for help. He heard a liability. He slowed down. "Sir?" I asked. "Why are you slowing down?" "I don't want no trouble," he mumbled. "He's driving crazy." "I know," I said. "That's why we need to go to a police station, or just stay on the main road. Please." David's SUV swerved again. He honked his horn, a long, aggressive blast. The driver flinched. I saw his knuckles turn white on the steering wheel. He wasn't scared for me. He was scared that his night of making $20 an hour was about to get ruined by some drama. And that's when the mobile siege really set in. I was trapped. I couldn't get out because David was right behind us. But I wasn't safe staying in because the driver was checking out mentally. I pulled out my phone. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? "I'm in a rideshare on Adelphi Street," I said, trying not to scream. "My ex-boyfriend is chasing us. He's driving aggressively. I'm scared." "Okay, ma'am, stay on the line. What kind of car are you in?" I gave the description. But here's the problem with calling 911 from a moving car. By the time I told them where we weren't there anymore. We were moving targets, and the driver heard me say, "Police." That was the nail in the coffin. He didn't want to talk to the cops. He didn't want to fill out a report. He didn't want to be a witness. He made a decision, a cold economic calculation. He hit the turn signal. He pulled over to the curb. We were on the 7,500 block of Adelphi Street. It wasn't a well-lit area. There were houses, but they were set back from the road. No people walking around, just shadows. The car stopped. "No, no, no," I pleaded. "Don't stop. Please keep going." The driver turned around in his seat. He looked me dead in the eye. "You gotta get out," he said. I froze. My brain couldn't process it. "What?" "He's chasing you," the driver said, gesturing to the SUV behind us. "I ain't getting involved in this. Get out of my car." "He will hurt me," I said. I was crying now. "If I get out, he's right there. Please, just drive." "Ride's over," the driver said. And then I heard the sound that haunts my nightmares. The sound of the power locks disengaging. He unlocked the doors. David's SUV had pulled up right behind us. I could see his headlights illuminating the interior of the rideshare. I was in the spotlight. "Get out!" the driver shouted. "Now, or I'm calling the cops on you." Think about the cruelty of that. He was threatening to call the police on me for refusing to step out into an abduction. I looked at the driver. I looked at the door handle. I realized in that moment that I had no allies. The social contract was broken. This man had taken my money, but he wouldn't take my side. I opened the door. The cold February air hit me. I stepped out onto the curb. My legs were shaking so bad, I almost fell. Before I could even close the door, the rideshare driver peeled off. He didn't wait to see if I was okay. He didn't wait for David to pass. He just floored it. I watched his taillights disappear down Adelphi Street. And then I was alone. Well, not alone. David's SUV rolled forward slowly, like a shark. He pulled up right next to me. The passenger window rolled down. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't screaming. He was smiling. "Hey, Sarah," he said. "Need a ride?" I looked around. Empty street. No cars coming. The 911 operator was still on my phone, asking me for an address. Ma'am, are you still there?" I looked at David. I looked at the phone. "Get in," David said. His voice dropped an octave. It wasn't a question anymore. "Get in the car, Sarah. Don't make a scene." He reached across the seat and opened the passenger door. I knew what would happen if I ran. He would chase me. He would tackle me on the pavement, and then he would drag me in. At least, if I got in voluntarily, maybe he wouldn't hit me. That's the bargaining you do in your head. You try to manage the violence. I hung up on the 911 operator. I got in the car. The smell of his car triggered me instantly. That mix of air freshener and cigarettes. It used to smell like comfort. Now it smelled like a cage. He locked the doors. The reverse of the rideshare. The rideshare unlocked them to dump me. David locked them to keep me. He started driving. He didn't drive fast. He drove with this terrifying calm. "Who was that?" he asked. "Just an Uber," I whispered. "He didn't seem to like you very much," David chuckled. "Kicked you right to the curb. That's cold." He was enjoying it. He was validating his own power. He was pointing out that nobody cared about me but him. "See," he said, "nobody is going to protect you, Sarah. Just me. I'm the only one who sticks around." This is the psychological torture of the mobile siege. He wasn't hitting me. He was just driving. But he was stripping away my reality. He was making me feel like I belonged to him because the rest of the world had rejected me. We drove for about 20 minutes. He didn't tell me where we were going. I didn't ask. I sat on my hands to stop them from shaking. My phone was in my pocket. I knew the police were probably trying to trace the call. But would they find us in time? He started talking about our relationship, rewriting history, telling me how I messed up, how I abandoned him. "I just wanted to talk," he said. "Why do you make everything so difficult? Why did you have to call the cops?" "I was scared," I said. "You shouldn't be scared of me," he snapped. He hit the steering wheel. "I love you." We drove in circles. I realized he didn't have a plan. He just wanted to have me. He wanted the possession. Eventually, he turned onto a street I recognized. my street. He was taking me home. It was the most confusing part of the night. I thought he was taking me to the woods or to his place, but he was taking me back to my apartment. Why? Because he wanted to show me that he could. He wanted to show me that he could pluck me out of a stranger's car, hold me captive for an hour, and then put me back exactly where he found me. He was depositing me, like I was an object he had borrowed and was done playing with. He pulled up to my building. "Get out," he said, exact same words the rideshare driver used. "And Sarah," he said, as I reached for the handle. "Happy Valentine's Day." I got out. I ran to my building door. I fumbled with my keys, sobbing, terrified he was going to grab me from behind. I got inside the lobby. I collapsed against the mailboxes. And that's when I saw the flashing lights. The police had traced my 911 call. They had pinged my phone. They were swarming my apartment complex because they figured he might head there. They saw David's SUV pulling away. When David saw the cops, he didn't surrender. He panicked. He stopped the car in the middle of the street. He bailed. He ran on foot into the neighborhood. I watched from the lobby window as the officers chased him. I saw the beam of their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They didn't catch him that night. He disappeared into the backyards. An officer came into the lobby. He found me on the floor. "Are you Sarah?" he asked. I nodded. "We saw him drop you off," he said. "Are you hurt?" "No," I said. "I don't think so." But I was hurt. I am hurt. The police took a report. They issued a warrant for kidnapping and stalking. They told me I was lucky. "Usually," the officer told me, "when they get you in the second car, you don't come back." I think about the rideshare driver every day. I wonder if he went home to his family that night. I wonder if he told his wife, "Yeah, some crazy lady tried to get me involved in her drama, so I kicked her out." I wonder if he slept well, because I don't sleep well. I tried to report him to the app. I told them everything. He ejected me while I was being stalked. He handed me over to my abuser. You know what they said? I got an automated email. "We are sorry to hear about your experience. Driver safety is a priority. We will ensure you are not matched with this driver again." Not matched with him again. That was their solution. They didn't ban him. As far as I know, he's still driving. He's still picking people up on Adelphi Street. I don't take ride shares anymore. I bought a car, a crappy used Honda. It breaks down sometimes. It costs a fortune in gas. But at least I control the locks. There is a term economists use, duty of care. It means that if you are paid to transport someone, you have a responsibility to keep them safe. But in the gig economy, duty is optional. Safety is a surcharge. And if you are a woman alone in the dark, running from a monster, you better hope your driver has a conscience, because the algorithm doesn't have one. So, the next time you get into an Uber or a Lyft, take a look at the driver, look at the back of his head, and ask yourself, if the wolves come for you, will he lock the door, or will he throw you out to feed them? That story is based on the events of the Hyattsville rideshare siege. It highlights a terrifying flaw in our modern transport system. We rely on these apps for safety. We think they are better than walking home alone, and usually they are. But the dump incentive is real. Drivers are incentivized to flee from conflict to protect their cars and their ratings. And predators know this. David knew that if he drove aggressively enough, the driver would fold. He weaponized the driver's selfishness against Sarah. If you are ever in this situation, Call 911 immediately and keep the line open. Scream if you have to. Make the driver aware that the police are already listening. Do not get out. If the driver stops, refuse to leave. Lock the doors yourself if you can. Make him drag you out. Make it a scene. A scene is safer than a silent abduction. Share your ride. Always use the share status feature with a friend. Be safe out there. The world is scary enough without the people we pay to help us turning against us. If you have a rideshare horror story, send it to the email below.